Okay, let's do a short demo to help you get started a little bit. Basically, I'm just going to show you quickly how you can think about the two cases for iterator pattern. I'll also refer you to the architecture diagram on the website. And let me, first of all, if you want to see the diagram, go to the lectures page, and then you will see the bound diagram for iterator pattern. If you click on that, you will see that's the complete one. Okay, you can look at that. I'm going to go over just the supplier side. Okay, we're going to see the diagram and do things together in the studio. It's a bound diagram, right, by draw.io. Okay, so what I would do, first of all, let's create a new project. Okay, open a terminal, make sure you are in your workspace, and then I would say iPhone new, let's say test iterator. Okay, iPhone new, sorry, just say iPhone new first. And then test iterator. Wow, wow, wow. You know what? It's not working on my machine. Should be working on your terminal. iPhone new, and then login. Let me do that again. Okay, test iterator. Okay, save that to your workspace. And then I'm going to unzip it. Okay, I'm going to compile that, and then I'll talk a little bit about the architecture. So it's test iterator, test. Okay, just let me start compiling. Okay. So now let me switch to iPad quickly. Okay, so now let's have a look at this diagram here. Okay, you may not be able to read it completely. I'll read it out to you. Okay, so basically there are two classes you have to know, the defer class. One is called iterable. Okay, one is called iterable, that is deferred. The other one is called iteration cursor, which is also deferred. And for the iteration cursor class, you have item, after, and forth. So every time if you want to create your own iteration cursor class, you have to implement these three features. That's what you have to do for this lab. Okay? Let's just talk about something light very quickly. So yesterday I talked about basically two cases. I only started with the first one. Let's talk about the first one and implement that quickly. So now case number one, the easy case. I'm going to use blue. Okay? So what we will do is we're going to create a new class. Let's call that, let's say, names. Okay? And then it's going to be effective. So that class, we're going to make it iterable. Okay? So now let me just go to iPhone Studio here, and then let's create a class quickly. So let's create a new class under model, and then let's call that names. Okay, under model, and creates. Okay, so now we have a new class here, and now let's declare the constructor. Let's just say make, and then we can say feature constructor. Okay, so this one just create empty names. Okay, let's also declare the implementation. Remember we talked about information hiding yesterday. You want to hide all the implementation structure. So what I will do is feature, and now this is some syntax you have to know. Inside the curly brackets, you're saying which client classes can get access to this particular feature section. If you put none, that means none of the classes can do it. So that means it's equivalent to private. Okay, so I'll put none here. That means none of the classes can get access to features here. Okay, let's say we simply got, let's say, collection of names, and then just put array. Okay, so now you can see that over here, this feature over here is simply public because we didn't have the exported to none. But this feature section here is completely private because it's exported to none, right? So now, what about the constructor? We can say creates a collection of names dot make empty. Okay, let's compile. Okay, everything compiled. Let's just do a simple command. Okay, let's add a name to it. Okay, so now for this one, I can say new name, string. Let's not worry about the contract for this demo here. Okay, so now we'll say collection of names dot force and then nn collection of names dot count plus 1. Right? Very straightforward. Okay, so far everything just works. Okay, so now a question for you. Right now, is it possible for any potential clients to go over the names in this particular class? Is it possible? It's not possible. Let me demonstrate that to you, and then we'll see how we can make iterator work. Let's go to the tests cluster. Go to test example. Again, I'm going to clear up everything here. Okay. Okay, first of all, I'm going to declare local variable here. NS, that'll be names. Test the names. So now, first of all, I can create a new one. So I can say create ns.make. Let's try to say ns.add name. Alan, let's say. ns.add name. Mark. Okay, let's say one more. Add name. Tom. Okay, so now a question for you. If I try the following, if I say from, let's say across, we can use across. If I simply say across ns.names is n, and then let's say I simply say io.put string, and then I will simply say n. Do you think this is going to compile? No. I heard no. Anybody who would say yes? What's names, right? Remember over here, in the names class, I did have an attribute called, oh, sorry, collection of names. That's my bad. What I meant to say, good, is this. That's what I meant to say. I didn't hit compile just yet. Do you think this will compile? Still no. Because it's private. Okay, let's double check first. That's very important to notice, right? So if I say compile over here, first of all, it failed. And then it would say that the feature of qualified call is not available to the client class. Simply because if you go to the names over here, you can see it's exported to none under the section. So that's why none of the classes can get access to it. Okay? Good. Yeah, so the names class is a supplier. And now we talk about no clients can actually get access to this feature. So that's why it's completely hidden. It's like a private. Good. And then so now what we can do is we can make it iterable. So what I will do now is go back to the architecture over here. Step number 1, we're going to make this class iterable. Okay, that's what we will do. And as soon as we do that, notice one thing here. Because we want to keep this class implemented as effective. However, this iterable superclass, they have a feature called new cursor that is deferred. We must implement all the abstract or deferred methods. Otherwise, we have to remain abstract, which we don't want to. Okay, so let's go back there. And then we go back to the names. And then all you got to do is inherits iterable. Okay? If you only say that, it's not going to compile if you only say that. Okay? It will simply tell you that you are expecting iterable of some generic parameter, but you only give just the name. That's a problem. Okay? So now, what should we put over here? Again, what I said yesterday, what you should put inside is question mark. Think about when the clients want to get access to names objects, what should they get one by one each time? A string. Very good. Very good. Okay. Okay. So now I would say iterable of string. So now, if I hit compile, what's going to happen? Would it work?
This was generic, not a specific.
New cursor. Okay, new cursor is not there. Okay, that's exactly what you will encounter when you do lab 2. Okay. Okay, it would say the class has deferred feature, but it was not implemented. New cursor, exactly right. Okay. So now what we should do is we should go to just find a feature section. Okay, I would say maybe I should say access. And then I would say new cursor, and now in order to see its type, let's refer to the diagram. So now if you look at the diagram here, you will see that it's of type iteration cursor, first of all. It's over here. I also drew a label for the client supplier. So that points to this particular iteration cursor class, right? Which means you're expecting to return some iteration cursor objects. But notice one thing. Iteration cursor itself is also deferred. So you cannot create an object out of iteration cursor right away. That's a problem. Okay? But that's an easy case, so we got easy solution for you. Okay? First of all, let me declare that. Okay, let me go back here, and then I will simply say iteration cursor. And now the type you put here typically will simply just match whatever you filled in for the iterable. Okay, over here. Okay, the same idea. Think about what should be the item you get, you retrieve from the collection one by one each time. Okay, and then I'll simply put a string over here. Okay, so now the problem is if you try to compile, okay, it's going to tell you that somehow you have not properly set the result for this new cursor. Nothing has been returned. So what should we return? Now, look at the diagram here. Okay, I'm going to give you visual hints. We know that at the moment we haven't implemented new cursor yet. However, let me give you visual hints. Notice that the names class is pointing to currently the array over here. And it's a client-supplier relations. And remember, it's a collection of names. Right? Over here. So now, according to this, is it possible from the diagram, rather than going this route to get to the iteration cursor, is it possible to follow another path? Aha, good. You can see from names, we got collection of names, which is already array. The array is effective, which means it must have got the new cursor implemented. In that case, why don't you follow this guy here? Okay, that will give you array iteration cursor, which is a subclass of this class over here. So that will just work. Okay, that's kind of the logic over here. Okay, so now let me just go there, and then that's what we're looking for. Okay, let's go back here, and then all I'm going to do is I'm simply going to say result is assigned to collection of names dot new cursor, and let's see this. Not available to the class. Yeah, so this one doesn't work. Let me just comment this out. I forgot. Let me put the comments for you. This access is invalid because it's exported to none. Okay, guys, so far, any questions so far? Yes?
So we didn't use the first path because it's prepared functional.
We didn't use?
The first path. Could you please just...
Okay, sure, no problem. We didn't use the first path over there. Okay, yes, correct. Yeah, because if you simply just go for this path over here, it wouldn't work because that's simply just deferred. At the runtime, you must give some dynamic type that's effective. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now to finish this easy case, let's go back to the test. So now remember previously we couldn't get access to the collection of names directly. So now since the class is iterable, we can now get access to it. How do we do that? Well, you can simply say across now ns, the objects directly. Because our names is now already iterable. Okay, I can say is, okay, and then I can loop and io dot put string. You know, let me write it a little bit better. Okay. So now, basically, every time you're trying to iterate through some iterable, you can try to store values into it. So let me just show you how to use linked list quickly. So what you can do is you can say, let's say, name list. Linked list of string. Okay, so before I try to go over that, names, I'm just going to say creates name list dot make. So this is one of the constructors for linked list, which will create empty list rather than make it empty. And then every time when I go through a name, I'll simply say name list dot extend, and then you can say n. So in some way, you don't have to use force for the array, like in the case of array. Okay, so now finally we can do a very quick test. You can say result is assigned to, first of all, the name list we try to build, dot count should be equal to 3, and for example, name list. To get access to linked list, you can also use a square bracket notation. That's also fine. Okay, and index start with 1. For example, the first element should be Alan. Should be 3. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Let's do a test. Okay, it passed. Guys, that's an easy case. Okay, the hard case is not that much harder. We're gonna see that. If you understand the logic over here, we're gonna see how to do the harder case. Okay, any questions?
Could you explain again how you went from the bottom architecture?
Okay, so now let's see the harder case. Let me first of all do something in Visual Studio to tell you what the problem is. Okay, so now let's go back to my Visual Studio here. Let's create another class. Okay, let me call that maybe book. Okay, so now the tricky thing is you don't always have just one structure in your class. You may have one array, one linked list, and one hash table, for example, in your lab 2. I'm going to make it a little bit simpler. Let's say we've got 2 structures over there. So now let's say we are talking about a book where there might be 2 things we're storing. Maybe one, you can store name and also birthday. You can store name and also telephone number, right? Things like that. What I'm going to say is I can say item 1, item 2. You can also say G and H. You can also say E and F, assuming that these are not going to clash with any existing name of the class. Okay? Item 1, item 2. And then I'm going to say, again, feature constructor. Let's say make. Create make. And then do, let's say, what should we implement? Let's say this is implementation. Very similar structure here. We want to hide the information. Okay, so now let's say we got one linked list, one array. How about that? Okay, so let's say we have items 1. And then we have an array of, let's say it's going to store all the type item 1. Okay, put it there. Items 2. That one is going to be a linked list, let's say. Item 2. Okay, so now over here, it will be very easy. So create items 1 dot make empty. And create items 2 dot make. Okay, everything compiled. Okay, so now let's just do one more thing. How can we add things to the book? Okay, we can say add over here. Oh, by the way, there's some question you asked me yesterday, one of you. What's the use of feature class over here? Okay, the use of it somehow is more like an outline to really get the outline more readable. I'll show you. Remember on day one, I said you can actually set the features as one of the tabs. If you go to features, you can see basically, if you click on that, this one shows you the feature that's called implementation. If you click on the next one, at the moment it's unnamed. I can say, for example, constructor. And then as soon as save, it will say constructor. It's just a way to organize your features. It's kind of optional, but I think it's better practice if you do it. Okay, let's go back. So now for another feature, I can say comments. Okay, so add, we should take two things over here. So now I can say item 1, item 2. Item 1 of type item 1. And also item 2 of type item 2. Okay, very easy to do. How about I let you complete it? Okay, it's this hard case is meant to be a little bit partial. I want you to do the exercise. Okay, you can add it. Okay, everything should compile right now. So now what should we do? Let's think about how we can go back to the test. Let me go to the groups and go back to the test. Let me add a new test over here. Add Boolean case, T1. And T1 over here, Boolean, comments, T1, you want to test the book. Okay, so now let's declare local. And then I can say B of type book. So now, question for you. If I simply hit compile, is it going to compile? What's missing? Not result? You need to instantiate the parameter types right over here, right? Because remember, book actually got two generic parameters, item 1 and item 2. You have to instantiate them. And this is some hint to you for lab 2. You really want to read the example test for the repository carefully so you can figure out what should be the order of the generic parameters. That's a hint to you, okay? Yeah? Good question. So what kind of types can you instantiate item 1 and item 2 into? Usually, you just instantiate them to effective classes. For example, like a person or names or string. You can also instantiate them to generic parameter as well. Another generic parameter, that's in the context. But that's a little more complicated. We can talk about it in the class. Deferred class, usually no. Usually no. Okay, so let's go back here. I will simply put, let's say, string and integer. Have a very quick test for you. Let's say if I declare book, string, and integer, according to that, I'm going to create a book object. What would be the type for the linked list? Would it be a string or integer? How do you know? Well, first of all, the second type is integer, right? And integer over here corresponds to the second generic parameter, item 2. And item 2 has been used over here in items 2. Okay, that's what's happening. Okay, okay, just a very quick explanation. Okay, let's go back to test example here. And now if I want to do a cross, for example, if I simply say across, let's say B, the book. And I want to say each one of them should be something. And then I want to do something similar. Right? That's what's missing, basically. That's a hard case. Because now what we're talking about over here is when you try to if you try to iterate through the book, how much information do you want to get from that each time? You want to get back the string, integer, or both? Right? It's kind of your option, really. depending on how you define the iterable eventually. So I would say here's a design choice. Every time if the clients want to get access to the book, they have some expectation. Do they want to retrieve a string at a time, an integer at a time, or both? Let's say both, okay? So what I would do is, let's say we make a design decision. Design decision. Each time a book clients retrieve an item from the book, it's going to be a tuple. And now we can also make a choice. Do you want to get a string first or the integer first? It's completely up to you. Okay, let me say I get the integer first. Oh, sorry, let me say it again. Do you want to get item 1 first or item 2 first? That's what I meant to say. It doesn't have to be item 1 followed by item 2. You can use both. Let me say item 2 followed by item 1. Okay, so now how do we translate this expectation into IFO, to programming syntax? So what we should do over here, let me go back to the diagram. Now this is the harder case. Now for the harder case, we're just going to, first of all, let me put a class inside. So we have a class over here, and that is called book. Okay, and we are going to create an inheritance over here, like this. Okay, so now we have an inheritance over here. So now what should we do over here? Now the tricky thing is, we have basically 2 data structure. One is item 1, the other one is item 2. Each one of them can return a new cursor back to us. So we have 2 new cursors, objects basically. But now how do we combine them together? There's not a general solution to it. So the best way to do it is create another customized iteration cursor class. That's a hard case. Okay? Here's the rule. Every time if you got more than one structures for your implementation, you may just want to create a customized iteration cursor. Okay? So let me just explain to you the steps. What we will do is we have to create just another class over here. Let's call that book iteration cursor. And then, by the way, it should be effective, right? That's the thing we're going to use. And then we have the inheritance over here. Question for you. If we declare this particular class, what features do we have to define? According to the diagram. Yeah, exactly, right? You gotta effect this one, and this one. Exactly right. But we'll try that. Okay? So once you have done that, basically what we will see is, eventually what we will see is we should have another client-supplier relation over here. Okay? And then that should be the new cursor. Okay? That's what we should get. Okay? I'll try to review this diagram tomorrow in the class just again. Okay? But now this is the first time you're exposed to this. Okay? So what I will do is I'll go back here. And then I'm going to say inherits iterable. And then that's what we decided. So I'm just going to put this. Okay? So now again, as soon as I hit compile, it's going to complain. Like syntax error. Let's see where. 72. Oh, let me just comment this out just for now. Okay? Okay, so now we have the same similar mistake as before. It says that the new cursor is not defined. Okay, let's define that quickly. Let's go back to the book. And then we have just another feature here.
Why don't we just items put or make empty?
So items 2 is of type linked list. There's no make empty in the linked list. You have to look at the API. So to make an empty list, you got to call make. That's just the way it is. Okay. Okay. Let's go back to here, and then we'll say this is the axis. New cursor. Okay. Let's first of all we just use the iteration cursor first, but dynamically we'll return our customized cursor objects. Iteration cursor. And then, so now what should be its type? Just copy this guy here, right? The same. So each item from the book will just be of tuple, okay? And then we have a small test at the end to test your understanding. So now what should we do over here? Basically, we can no longer do the easy case anymore, because now the problem is if you simply call items1.new cursor and also items2.new cursor, you cannot return two new cursor objects at the same time, right? That's a problem, okay? So now what we will do is, as I said, we're going to create a book iteration cursor. Let's do it. Let's go back to our cluster over here. And then under model, I'm going to create another class. Let's call that book iteration cursor. Okay, and then creates. Okay, book iteration cursor. Let's go to the class. Okay, so now this class over here is also going to have basically some generic parameter, right, over here. Okay. So now let me simply say item 1 and item 2. Let me say item 1, item 2 for now. Okay. By the way, every time when you are trying to declare parameters, you can only put a list of names over here, like item 1, comma separated, and item 2. Okay. So now let's see what we should do over here. Inherits iteration cursor. So now we should put something over here. Okay, any suggestion? Yeah, the tuple, right? I tell you why it should be a tuple. So now in order to figure out this particular type, go back to the new cursor feature. If we go back to the new cursor of the book, if we go back there and go to the new cursor feature, okay, let me just go there. And you can see it's simply going to return iteration cursor and then tuple item 1 and item 2. That's what's going to be returned, right? So you should really put there. Okay. Okay, I'll go back to book iteration cursor. Okay, that's what I'll put. And notice one thing. When I declare this guy over here, I simply say item 1, item 2. But over here, I flip the order, item 2, item 1. Okay? Notice one thing here. I will try to explain this kind of a trick a little bit more in class. That can be done more properly when I set it up. But now, for now, I want you to think about why you cannot switch the order. Okay? Think about it. Okay? And then after this, I'm just going to try to hit compile. Aha! What does that mean? Can you read it? We got exactly 3 error messages. They said class has deferred feature but was not implemented. Okay, so it will be the item, after, and fourth, right? The 3 features. If you expand the error messages, you will see exactly, for example, item. Okay, so let's now put it. And now let's see. Go back to the diagram. Okay, if you go back there, iteration cursor. When we try to do it, whatever G we are passing, okay? Whatever G that we pass is going to affect what this G should be and just what this G should be, right? So now remember, in our case, we instantiate iteration cursor, the G to be tuple item 2, item 1, right? Remember? So let me just pick a notes. In our case, it's simply tuple item 2, item 1. So now what should be the type over here? G, just the same. Okay, I'm just trying to show you the step of figuring out. Okay, so now we'll simply go there and then say item over here, tuple of item 2, item 1. Okay, and then let's do one more. And then after, which is Boolean. Okay, you can implement that. Okay, and then after, fourth. Okay, so these are all the 3. Okay, result is not properly set. Let's see where. Okay, it's the new cursor. So now, given that we have created this class that's effective, the book iteration cursor, now we can create it. there's a syntax I want to show you quickly in IFO. Okay, let me show you this. First of all, in Java, let's say if I say list, you know what, let me make it even simpler for you. Let's say we have a class called students. And then we have inheritance over here. And let's say international student, for example. Okay, we have an inheritance relation here. In Java, what you can do is you can say students S is assigned to new. And according to what you learned in 2030, what can you put new over here? Descending classes, right? Let's say students and international student are both effective. You can put both, either way. But let me just put international student. But we'll review this in the class, don't worry, because you need that kind of knowledge for design patterns. So I can simply put international students. And now a very quick reminder. This is so-called static type. And this is dynamic type. Okay. IFO has exactly the same idea, but the syntax is a little bit different. Okay, let me show you. Okay. What about in IFO? First of all, maybe you declare the variable, you say S is of type students. So this corresponds to this part, just declaration. And how do you use it? To use it, you would say creates, which corresponds to the new. And now, if the dynamic type is different from the static type, you have to use some bracket notation. So you would say creates international students specifically. And then it's S we're talking about s.make. So to be more clear, dynamic type here is exactly this type over here. And the static type over here is exactly the static type over here. Just correspondence. Let me say one more thing, okay? There is a shorthand sometimes. If I want to do something like this, if I say students S2 is simply new students. You can see this and this are exactly the same. You can omit that in IFO. What you can do is, I'll show you. Okay, let's say this is green. Okay, in IFO you can simply say local S2 students. And then do over here, you can simply say creates S2 dot make. You don't have to say the curly brackets part. You only say that when the dynamic type is different. Okay, but we'll also remind that in the lecture, just quick. Okay, so let's go back there. What should we put? So now, since we already know the dynamic type, so creates, I would say iteration, book iteration cursor. Okay, so in this case, we're going to say item 1, item 2. And then result.make. Let's see what we have. Oh, we need to put a make, sorry. Let me go back to book iteration cursor. I haven't declared the constructor yet, that's why. Okay, let's do that. So we're going to say creates and make. And then feature constructor. Okay, now set. Okay, I'll just put a warning for you. Basically, what it is complaining right now, you have not set this particular tuple. That's a problem. Okay, you got to give some value. I'll leave that to you. Okay, I'll give you a little bit more comments about how you can complete it, so that will help you. Okay. Basically, what you have to do now is how we can implement this particular class. Okay. Basically, how we can create an iteration cursor over the book. I'll give you the steps. Number 1, okay, this is your to-do, okay? Extend Oh, sorry, I'll go to the wrong class. Go to the book iteration cursor, okay? To do. Extend this make constructor so that it can store information from the book. Which means currently the make constructor, when you try to create an instance of it, you don't pass any input. You should. Because when you look at the book class over here, when you look at that, when I was trying to create this particular instance, you can see that when I was trying to create these objects, I didn't pass any of the internal structure from the book into it. You should. Okay? So now, a little hint to you. Maybe you want to declare the make such that items 1 and items 2, for example, should be accepted. So now you're basically passing these two internal structures to the cursor, and the cursor itself can iterate through them for the clients. That's kind of the idea. Okay? That's where I would stop over here. Okay? You can complete it. Any questions? Yeah, go ahead. I'll answer the question first, and then I'll stop the recording. Yeah.
For book iteration cursor, should it be
Item
item 2, item 1?
2, item 1. Okay, that's something I can say that works. Okay, I would say I will cover this a little bit more properly in the lecture, but I will leave you to think about why it should be item 2, item 1 as opposed to the other way around. There's a reason. Okay. Yeah.
So that works as well, or is it?
That works. But if you switch the order to item 1, item 2, it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so now I would say your best bet right now, go to the, you can complete the exercise over here, and also go to the lectures page, and notice that for 3311, there are 2 tutorial videos over there about iterator pattern. I would say maybe you have a brief look. You can feel free to jump to sections for the tutorial just to study that. It will help you also with more details about the harder case. Okay, I'll stop here, and then I'll cover more tomorrow in the lecture.